A witch gave my family a curse 200 years ago. It's still killing us one by one. I remembered the chill that ran down my spine the night I first heard the whisper of our family's secret, a secret that had haunted us for over 2 centuries. It was a cold, windy autumn evening, the kind where the trees contort into grotesque shapes against a bruised sky, and I sat alone in my creaking ancestral home. The house had been passed down from generation to generation, a vessel for our collective sorrow and mystery. That night, as the grandfather clock in the hall began its slow, steady toll, I felt the air thicken with something old and malevolent. For as long as I could remember, every year on the same night, precisely at 11:13 p.m., one of my relatives would meet an untimely death, a death shrouded in inexplicable circumstances that defied logic and medicine. We dismissed it as fate, a tragic coincidence. But in the dead silence that enveloped that night, I knew better. I began to trace back our lineage, unearthing dusty diaries, brittle letters, and faded photographs. In the yellowed pages of an ancient journal, I discovered the chilling truth. A curse had been cast upon my bloodline 200 years ago by a vengeful witch. Her name had been Esmeralda, a woman scorned and wronged by our ancestors. The accounts of her tale were as fragmented as the records of that time. According to local folklore, she was a healer and a seer who possessed a power that bridged the gap between this world and the next. When she was betrayed by those who feared her gift, she vowed a terrible retribution, a curse that would seep into the veins of every descendant, dooming them to a slow, painful demise. Each death was a macabre reminder of her wrath, a ticking clock that counted down the lives of those cursed by her spell. The more I read, the more the pieces of my own family history began to fall into a dark mosaic. I learned of unspeakable events, sudden illnesses that mimicked ancient plagues, inexplicable accidents that left behind only a cold wind and a shattered mirror, and even instances of madness that drove the afflicted to isolation and despair. The curse, it seemed, was an intricate tapestry woven with threads of vengeance, despair, and supernatural malice. It began with my great-grandmother Lillian, a woman of formidable beauty and grace, whose laughter once filled the halls of our ancestral manor. At the tender age of 38, she died under mysterious circumstances. The official records mentioned nothing more than a sudden heart attack, but whispered rumors among the family hinted at something far more sinister, an encounter with a shadowy figure on a moonlit night, a figure said to be the manifestation of Esmeralda's wrath. Over time, each generation had been burdened with their own tale of sorrow and abrupt loss, until the curse seemed to follow us like a dark cloud that no amount of sunlight could dispel. As I delved deeper into our ancestry, the first-hand accounts of those who had come before me began to seep into my mind. I found myself haunted by memories that were not entirely my own. Visions of a figure in tattered robes, her eyes filled with anguish and fury. I could almost hear her voice in the creaks of the floorboards, a spectral echo that demanded retribution. My nights became restless, plagued by dreams in which I wandered through a labyrinth of cobwebbed corridors and dim candlelight. I encountered people I had never met, their faces etched with the sorrow of centuries, their voices whispering warnings in a language that felt both ancient and primal. One particular night, as I pored over Esmeralda's story, I felt an inexplicable urge to leave the safety of my study and venture into the overgrown garden behind the house. There, amid the wild tangles of ivy and thorn, I uncovered a weathered stone marker. Its inscription was nearly illegible, but as I squinted at the worn letters, I discerned a single word: redemption. The word sent a shiver down my spine. Could it be that there was a way to break the curse? The notion was both tantalizing and terrifying. What would it mean to undo a curse so steeped in ancient lore? And more importantly, what price would be demanded? For days, I wandered the labyrinthine paths of old folklore, seeking out any reference to Esmeralda's curse. I contacted local historians, scoured archives in nearby libraries, and even reached out to a reputed practitioner of folk magic in a neighboring town. Each thread of research revealed that the curse was more than a simple misfortune. It was an intricate bond between the spiritual and the corporeal realms, a punishment that could only be undone by confronting the witch herself or by performing an act of sacrifice so profound that it would echo through the annals of time. My research led me to an obscure manuscript written in an archaic dialect, a text that outlined a ritual purportedly capable of breaking the curse. The ritual required ingredients that were as rare as they were macabre. A lock of hair from a descendant who had been touched by the curse, water from a spring untouched by human hands, and a relic that once belonged to Esmeralda herself, a silver pendant said to have been imbued with her power. The manuscript hinted that the ritual could only be performed under a blood moon, a celestial event that would amplify the energies of both the curse and its potential undoing. I was torn between fear and a desperate hope. Could I really be the one to break this centuries-old curse? Every fibre of my being screamed that this was a fool's errand, a path that could lead to even greater darkness. Yet, the relentless cycle of death and despair had already claimed too many lives. I thought of my cousins, my aunts and uncles, and even strangers who had once walked these cursed halls. The legacy of pain was a chain I longed to shatter. As the next blood moon approached, I made preparations that felt both archaic and surreal. I gathered the ingredients as meticulously as one might collect sacred relics. I visited the spring in the dense forest at dawn, where the water shimmered with a cold luminescence. I sought out the silver pendant from an elderly woman in a remote village, who claimed that it had been in her family for generations, passed down through whispers and secret rites. The lock of hair, however, was the most personal ingredient. It was taken from my own head, a tangible piece of the cursed lineage. I hesitated as I clipped a small strand, feeling as if I were severing a connection to a part of myself that I had long tried to forget. The night of the blood moon arrived with a foreboding hush. The sky was an eerie, bruised red, and the full moon hung like an omen over the countryside. I returned to the garden where the ancient stone marker waited like a silent sentinel. In the center of the clearing, I set up the ritual altar, arranging the ingredients with trembling hands. The manuscript's instructions were precise, demanding an incantation in the old tongue, a language I struggled to decipher from the faded lines of the manuscript. I began to chant, my voice faltering as I recited the archaic verses into the cold night air. The wind seemed to answer my call, swirling around me and lifting the fallen leaves in a ghostly dance. The silver pendant glowed faintly, casting fractured reflections across the stones and grass. As the incantation reached its crescendo, I felt the air grow even colder, and a presence stirred in the darkness. It was as if the very spirit of Esmeralda had been roused from its long slumber. A figure emerged from the shadows, a spectral woman with eyes that burned with an ancient fury. Her presence was overwhelming, a blend of sorrow and wrath that paralyzed me. I recognized her immediately as Esmeralda, though her form was distorted by the mists of time. "You dare summon me," she hissed, her voice both anguished and accusatory. I steadied myself, recalling the resolve that had carried me through years of quiet desperation. "I seek to break the curse," I declared, my voice echoing in the vast silence of the night. "Our family has suffered long enough. I will not let your vengeance continue to claim lives." Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of recognition, as if she were evaluating my sincerity. "To break a curse so steeped in blood and sorrow," she intoned, "one must offer a sacrifice more profound than any mortal can bear. Are you willing to pay that price?" I hesitated, the gravity of her words sinking deep into my bones. The manuscript had spoken of sacrifice, a willingness to let go of one's deepest self to bring about redemption. I will do what it takes," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "But tell me what must be done." Esmeralda's gaze softened briefly, a fleeting moment of melancholy passing over her spectral features. The curse was born of betrayal, of unhealed wounds passed down through your blood. To break it, you must face the truth of your lineage. You must confront the sins of the past and atone for them. Only then will the chains be broken. And so began a journey not just through the mists of time, but into the darkest recesses of my own soul. The ritual had awakened forces that demanded I confront memories I had long suppressed. I was plagued by visions of our ancestors, faces twisted in pain, their voices echoing with regret and sorrow. I saw the moment when Esmeralda had been wronged, the betrayal that had unleashed this curse. I witnessed a bitter quarrel between a proud patriarch and a woman whose power was feared. I saw the cruelty that led to her exile, her desperate plea for justice, and the final fateful act of vengeance. Each vision was a piece of a puzzle that had haunted our family for generations. I learned that the curse was not merely a punishment inflicted by a vengeful witch, but a reflection of the deep-seated wounds that festered within our bloodline. It was a legacy of broken promises, of love twisted by ambition, and of secrets that had poisoned our lives like a slow-acting venom. Days turned into nights as I battled with the weight of these revelations. My dreams were filled with the anguished cries of ancestors, their voices mingling with Esmeralda's lament. I began to understand that breaking the curse was not just about performing a ritual, it was about healing the fractures within our family's soul. The sacrifice Esmeralda demanded was not one of physical harm, but of letting go of the bitterness and guilt that had bound us for so long. I returned to the ancient stone marker, the pendant still clutched tightly in my hand, and confronted the spectral figure once more. "I have seen the truth," I said, my voice resolute. "Our family's suffering is rooted in the betrayal and unhealed wounds of the past. I offer not just my hair, but my willingness to forgive, to seek redemption for our sins. I am ready to break the chains." Esmeralda regarded me silently, the intensity in her eyes softening as if touched by a long-forgotten compassion. The wind stilled, and the red glow of the blood moon seemed to dim in response to the change. "Then listen well," she said, her voice now tinged with sorrow rather than wrath. "To break the curse, you must gather your kin. You must bring forth those who have been touched by this legacy and reveal the truths that have been hidden in the darkness. Only when the entire family stands united, acknowledging the pain of the past, can the curse be lifted." The revelation struck me with the force of a tidal wave. I had always believed that the curse was a solitary burden, one that each generation bore in isolation. But now I understood that it was a collective malady, a wound that needed healing from the inside out. The sacrifice required was not an individual offering, but a communal act of catharsis and forgiveness. In the days that followed, I reached out to every living member of my family. I arranged a gathering at our ancestral home, a reunion that was fraught with tension, hidden resentments, and unspoken grief. Relatives traveled from far and wide, each carrying their own scars and stories of loss. There were those who had long denied the existence of the curse, dismissing it as superstition. Others had accepted it as an immutable part of our destiny. But as the night of our gathering fell upon us, the air was thick with anticipation and an undercurrent of fear. We sat in a circle in the dim light of the drawing room, the old house creaking around us, as if whispering secrets of bygone eras. I recounted the revelations I had uncovered, reading aloud passages from the ancient journal and the manuscript. I spoke of Esmeralda, of the injustice that had been inflicted upon her, and of the deep wounds that had festered in our family's soul. I urged my kin to speak, to share their own memories and confessions, no matter how painful. At first there was silence, a heavy, suffocating silence that spoke of decades of repressed emotions. Then, one by one, voices began to tremble as they recounted tales of regret and sorrow. An uncle spoke of a lost love he had betrayed, a love that had been sacrificed at the altar of ambition. A cousin admitted to a secret that had torn a family apart, a betrayal that had led to a suicide many years ago. A grandmother wept as she recalled the day she had turned away a beggar, only to learn later that he was a wandering seer who had foretold calamities for our family. As the confessions poured forth, a strange catharsis began to take hold. The walls of silence that had encased our family for generations were crumbling, replaced by a raw, unfiltered truth. In that moment, I felt the oppressive weight of the curse begin to lift, as if the very act of acknowledging our collective pain was an offering to the spirit of redemption. The air grew lighter, and for the first time in centuries, there was a sense of hope, a tentative promise that perhaps we could forge a new legacy, one unburdened by the chains of ancient misdeeds. The climax of the evening came as the clock struck 11:13 p.m., the cursed hour. We all gathered in the garden, standing in a circle around the ancient stone marker, the silver pendant placed at its center. With trembling voices and tearful eyes, we recited an invocation of forgiveness, a prayer to absolve the sins of the past and to release the tortured souls bound by the curse. I felt the wind stir gently, carrying with it a soft, mournful melody, a song that seemed to be sung by the voices of all our ancestors, their lament now transforming into a hymn of healing. In that sacred moment, as the last syllable of our prayer faded into the night, I felt a profound shift. The oppressive presence that had haunted our family for so long receded into the shadows, replaced by a delicate, almost imperceptible warmth. It was as if the spirit of Esmeralda herself had acknowledged our efforts, not with wrath, but with a quiet resignation, and perhaps even a hint of gratitude. The curse that had claimed lives year after year began to wane, its hold on our bloodline loosening with every tear shed and every secret confessed. In the days and weeks that followed, we watched in awe as the cycle of death and despair was gradually broken. The foreboding silence that once marked the anniversary of our tragedies was replaced by a sense of cautious optimism. I could see it in the eyes of my relatives, a spark of hope that had long been extinguished. The realization that we had the power to alter our destiny, to break free from the dark chains of the past, was transformative. Yet the journey was not without its scars. The revelations that had come to light during that fateful night forced each of us to confront parts of ourselves that we had long denied. The process of healing was neither swift nor easy. There were moments when old wounds reopened, when the grief of unspoken regrets resurfaced with a vengeance. I found myself spending long hours alone in the study, poring over the faded pages of our family's history and questioning the nature of forgiveness. I wrestled with the duality of our existence, how the same blood that carried a curse could also be the source of redemption. But even in the midst of our collective pain, there was a burgeoning sense of unity. We began to organize regular gatherings, not to dwell on our misfortunes, but to celebrate the lives we had reclaimed from the shadow of the curse. The ancestral home, once a monument to sorrow, slowly transformed into a sanctuary of remembrance and healing. We established a small memorial in the garden, a place where each of us could leave a token of our regrets and our hopes for the future. It became a ritual, a way to honor those we had lost and to reaffirm our commitment to forging a new path forward. The most profound change came to me personally. I had always felt the weight of the curse as a personal burden, a constant reminder of the sins of my ancestors. But as I witnessed the transformation in my family, I began to see that the curse was not an immutable destiny, but a challenge, a call to confront the darkness and to emerge stronger. I embraced the responsibility of being a keeper of our family's history, not as a bearer of shame, but as a guardian of truth. I started to document our stories, our failures, and our triumphs, determined that the lessons of the past would serve as a guide for future generations. There were, of course, moments when the spectre of Esmeralda would return in my dreams, a silent reminder that the legacy of her curse had been deeply woven into the fabric of our lives. In these dreams, I would see her standing at the edge of a misty path, her eyes searching for redemption in a sea of regret. But over time, those dreams began to change. The ferocity in her gaze softened, replaced by an expression that hinted at forgiveness and sorrow. It was as if she, too, was finally coming to terms with the burdens of the past. I came to believe that her vengeance had been a desperate cry for recognition, a plea to be seen, to be understood, and ultimately to be absolved of the injustices inflicted upon her. In one particularly vivid dream, I found myself walking alongside Esmeralda in a moonlit clearing. The air was thick with the scent of night-blooming flowers, and a gentle river murmured in the distance. "Why did you choose this path of vengeance?" I asked, my voice echoing softly among the trees. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, in a voice that trembled with both anger and regret, she replied, "I was wronged. I was cast aside like refuse, my gifts twisted into curses. I never meant for my pain to be passed on like a plague. I only wanted to be heard, to be remembered." As her words faded into the night, I realized that her anger was not merely directed at our family. It was a lament for a lost humanity, a grief that had transcended time and space. Breaking the curse was in many ways a redemptive act for both our family and for her spirit. We were all, in our own ways, prisoners of a legacy that had spiraled into darkness. The ritual of that blood moon night had been the catalyst for a transformation that went far beyond a simple lifting of a spell. It had been a collective rebirth. The threads of our past, woven with sorrow and regret, were being rewoven into a tapestry of healing and hope. Years have passed since that pivotal night, and while the memories of those dark times still linger, they no longer hold the same power over us. Our family gatherings have become a celebration of life, of the resilience of the human spirit. The curse that once defined us has been replaced by a legacy of redemption, a reminder that even in the face of ancient, inescapable doom, there is always a chance for healing, for forgiveness, and for a new beginning. I now look out upon our family, seeing not a lineage cursed by an ancient witch, but a testament to the strength that lies in confronting one's past. I see in the eyes of my children and grandchildren the spark of a future unburdened by the sins of yesteryear. And though I still feel the weight of history upon my shoulders, I also carry the light of hope, a light that Esmeralda's spirit, in its final moments of regret, seemed to have passed on. On quiet evenings, when the wind whispers through the trees and the moon casts its gentle glow over the land, I sometimes catch a glimpse of a shadow moving at the edge of my vision. In those fleeting moments, I no longer feel fear or despair, but a profound sense of connection, a reminder that every soul, no matter how tormented, yearns for redemption. The curse may have been born of a witch's wrath, but it was ultimately transformed by our collective courage to face our own demons. My journey has taught me that the darkest curses are often intertwined with the brightest hopes. The agony that once plagued our family became the soil in which the seeds of renewal were sown. In acknowledging the truth of our past, we freed ourselves from its chains, and while the memory of Esmeralda's curse will forever be a part of our history, it no longer defines our destiny. In the end, I have come to understand that the true magic lies not in the casting of curses or the performing of rituals, but in the power of human connection, of forgiveness, and of the relentless pursuit of redemption. The spirit of Esmeralda, once a harbinger of sorrow and retribution, now lives on in a different form, a reminder that even the deepest wounds can heal when met with compassion and understanding. I write these words not merely as a chronicle of events, but as a testament to the transformative power of truth. For every whispered secret in the halls of our ancestral home, for every tear shed in the quiet hours of the night, there is a story of resilience and hope waiting to be told. I hope that by sharing our journey, I might offer solace to others who find themselves ensnared by the shadows of the past. Let our tale be a beacon to those who struggle against the ghosts of regret, a reminder that even the darkest curse can be undone by the light of forgiveness. Now, as I sit at my desk, the pages of my journal filled with the weight of our family's legacy, I feel a profound sense of peace. The cycle of death that once loomed over us has been broken, replaced by a promise that our family will continue to thrive, to love, and to remember. And in that promise, I see the echo of Esmeralda's final mournful words, a plea for understanding that ultimately transformed into a gift of redemption. This is not the end of our story, but the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter where the pain of the past is honored, but not allowed to dictate the future. A chapter where every life reclaimed is a victory over the curse, every act of forgiveness a step towards a brighter destiny. I have learned that while history may be written in blood and sorrow, it can also be rewritten with the ink of hope, compassion, and unwavering resolve. As the moon continues its eternal dance across the heavens, I will carry forward the legacy of our ancestors, not as a burden, but as a reminder of the strength that lies within each of us. The curse may have been cast by a witch long ago, but it is our collective spirit that has rewritten the narrative, turning a tale of horror into one of healing. And so, I close this chapter with gratitude for the painful lessons learned and with a hopeful heart for the future, knowing that in our unity, we have found the true magic that can dispel even the darkest of curses.